Sometimes in life, our weaknesses can become our biggest strengths if we allow them. And if you're sitting there this evening, you're saying to yourself, and you can feel you're being held back, that something's holding you back from doing the things you want to do in life, from trying something new, from doing something different, but for some reason you're held back and you're just not doing those things, then tonight's gospel reading is for you. I was talking to a buddy of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that he had a brand new in-ground swimming pool installed in his backyard this summer. They started digging his swimming pool back in April, and on July the 4th, it was completely done, cement deck and all. He told me he has his entire family over his house to have the grand opening for his new swimming pool, and it's a 4-swimming pool from one side to the other. He's inside of the swimming pool, and his 4-year-old granddaughter, she was standing on a deck of the swimming pool, and she wanted to run across and jump into his arms. So she's standing there, and she keeps asking her grandfather, "Are you going to catch me? Are you going to catch me?" He said, "Yeah, I'll catch you. Come on." So she ran across the deck, and just before she jumped, she stopped. And she had this nervous giggle, and kind of her body was just shaking, and she kept asking, "Are you going to catch me?" He said, "Yes, I'll catch you." He said, "Go to the back of the deck and run over again, and I'll catch you." And she kept asking, "You're going to catch me?" And she ran across, and it looks like she was going to do it, but she stopped right at the edge. Oh, she just had that nervous giggle, and her body is shaking. She wants to jump in the pool so bad, but she's so fearful, and she is wondering whether or not she should trust Grandpap. And he said, "Look, I'll catch you. Stand to the far end, run over again, try it, and just leap, and I'll catch you." Okay, and then she did that. She started running across the deck, and all of a sudden, she jumped off the deck, and she fell right into his arms. And once he grabbed her, he lowered her into the water, and he got her up out of the water, and she's smiling, and she's giggling. And what do you think was the first thing she said when she came up out of the water? "Can I do it again, Grandpap? Can I do it again?" And then he walked her over to the deck, and he said they spent like the next hour, she just kept jumping off the side of the pool. They had a great time together. And he said that afternoon, just her jumping into his arms for a complete hour, it made all the money spent on that pool worth it. But you see, she suffered from fear and mistrust. She was afraid to jump off of that deck. But when she did, in many ways, her joy just started. It turned her life around. That's really the key point of today's gospel reading. Now, the gospel tonight comes out of the 7th chapter of Mark, verses 31 to 37. And in tonight's gospel reading, there is a fellow who is deaf and has a speech impediment, and they take this man to Jesus to see if Jesus can help this man. Let's take a look at what happens. We want to look at verse 34 and 35, again of the 7th chapter of Mark. So it starts off by saying in verse 34, he took him. Now that's a reference to Jesus took him, the man that was deaf and a speech impediment, off by himself away from the crowd. Now he, Jesus, put his finger into the man's ears and spitting touched his tongue. And then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, be opened. But what I want you to look at is the second part, which is verse 35. Then Jesus looked up to heaven. You see in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, every time Jesus performs a miracle, whatever that miracle might be, or when he attempts to perform it, he never does anything without first looking up to heaven, without first asking his Father, our Father, "Can you help me do this?" It turns out to be, by this point in Mark's Gospel, and in the ministry of Jesus Christ, Jesus never cured anyone from deafness or speech impediment up to this point. This is going to be the very first time Jesus tries this. And he doesn't do it on his own. He stops, he looks up to heaven, he asks for the assistance of power from God, and then he says, "Ephphatha," that is, be opened. What a powerful message for all of us this evening. In our lives, every time we try something new or try something old and just do it again, we should always just stop and look up to heaven and say, "God, will you be with me as I try this new venture, this new job, this new realm of life? Will you be there for me?" When you get up in the morning and driving to work, that'll be the first time you were driving to work on that particular morning, you should say, "God, be with me as I make this travel, this drive." How important it is to incorporate God into your life. And that's exactly what Jesus does. Now let's take a look at the result of what happens when Jesus stops, he looks up to heaven, He's seeking the power of God his Father. And with that, he courageously says, Ephphatha, that is, be open. And then what happens? Verse 36, 7th chapter of Mark. Let's take a look at it. And after all that unfolded, it said, immediately the man's ears opened and speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. Now that's a very important text right there, verse 36, 7th chapter of Mark. Just look at the chronology of what goes on here. You see, the man's speech impediment was directly caused by his deafness. If you cannot hear words that someone else speaks and you attempt to speak, you will not be able to replicate those words properly. But if you can hear how someone says a certain word, and you know that you can repeat that word, and when you say it, you'll hear how you say it, and if you need to make an adjustment, you will. So what happens first is the man's ears were opened, and then his speech impediment was removed. That wasn't the other way around. His speech impediment wasn't removed, and then the ears were opened. The ears opened first. Now he can hear. Now he can replicate sound, and then his speech impediment was removed. That's an incredible chronology. And that's why it's so important whenever you read the Scriptures, not just to plow through the Scriptures, to sit down some evening and read the entire book of Mark's Gospel, which is only 16 chapters, and biblical chapters are short, because you missed the nuance of the meaning. That's a powerful little nuance. One little verse. But it shows us how Jesus operated. Because he realized, when I open up the man's ears, he'll gain his hearing, lose his speech impediment. Now, he had this impediment. There it is. Psychologists say that just about every human being suffers from some style of an impediment. We all have them. Now, maybe you have been able to overcome one or two or several of your impediments. Maybe you're dealing with an impediment right tonight. But what exactly, Father Ken, is an impediment? Let's take a look at the etymology, the breakdown of the word impediment. Let's take a look at this. Impediment. Now, the root word for the word impediment is ped. And the word ped means foot, your feet. So the word pedal, if you got a pedal bike, you're using your feet to drive the pedal bike. That's your source of energy, or your feet, or your foot, to move that bike. That's the pedal. Now the prefix impediment, the prefix im, that's a negative. So when you put that together, to impede means to be kept from going forward. You're being held back. An impediment is anything that holds you back in life. Impediments come in many different disguises. One impediment that many people suffer from is the impediment of fear. Many people say to themselves, well, I would love to get up and address my class, or I would love, if I'm at a meeting at work, to say something as we're sitting around the table and all my coworkers are around that table. I have something important to say, but I'm fearful. Because if I go to say something, it might not come across right. So I'm just going to sit here in this meeting like a bump on a log and not say a word. And you're going to sit there, and probably what's going to happen? Someone else is going to say the very thing you were thinking about saying, and the boss is going to say, great job, I like the way you think. And you're going to say to yourself, hey, that was mine. But no one knew it. Because why? You were fearful. You kept it to yourself. You suffer from the impediment of fear, which held you back. It kept you from moving forward in life. And there's the impediment of hatred. That's a huge impediment. Hatred is an animosity in your heart, where you're being held back by something that happened a week ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago in your life. And you just keep replaying this incident over and over in your heart. And you got a hatred for that person or those things or that whatever it was that hurt you. And you just seethe inside. It keeps you from moving forward. Now, it is difficult to get rid of hatred. But hatred, they say, is the biggest waste of emotion in the entire world. You'll never waste anything more than when you spend time on hatred. because it eats you alive, it keeps you from moving forward, it holds you back. Hatred is horrible. Now, if you really want to know what hatred is like, and you might have had this happen to you in your life, but you might have someone you're talking to, and they might be talking about something or someone, and you can hear their hatred. And you say to yourself, that looks horrible, that sounds horrible, their life must be horrible because it's a carcinogenic. They're being eaten alive by that hatred. The impediment of greed. And in our materialistic society, greed is a problem. Because we all want certain things, we all want certain material acquisitions. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you're lucky enough to get yourself a nice 65-inch TV, you want to celebrate that. But how many people suffer the impediment of greed that the moment they put together the 65-inch TV, and the next morning on a Sunday they're sitting down to read the paper and they see a 75-inch TV that was for sale, almost the same cost as theirs. And then all of a sudden what? You don't like yours anymore because now I wanted this one. I should have waited a week. So instead of enjoying what you have, enjoying what you had, you're always trying to chip away and get something else. That's the impediment of greed. So you never enjoy your possessions. You never enjoy what you have because you look at what you have and say, it could have been bigger. It could have been better. Had I waited, had I spent a little bit more. That's a real difficult impediment. The psychologists are right, and they say that near every human being suffers from some style of impediment. You know tonight better than I, but individually you know more than the person you're sitting next to, what your impediment is, what holds you back, what makes you fearful and distrust, what makes you feel that sense of greed, and what makes you feel angry and have hatred in your heart. You know what keeps your face from smiling and having peace in your heart. It's going to be some style of impediment. And our prayer should be this: Heavenly Father, grant anyone here tonight who suffers from any style of impediment, because they come in various forms and in different disguises, give anyone here tonight to suffer from some style of impediment, release and liberation from that impediment. Because all an impediment does, it keeps you from moving forward, and it holds you back, and it keeps you from enjoying life and being happy.